Introduction: the question of the modern woman, the freedom to choose, the responsibility to become. For thousands of years, a woman's life was shaped before she had the chance to shape it herself. The place where she was born, the family she belonged to, the traditions surrounding her, the expectations of her society. These forces often determined the path she would follow, her opportunities, her responsibilities, her identity. But then, something began to change. A transformation began that would reshape not only the lives of women, but the entire structure of human civilization. Women entered universities, they entered laboratories, they entered boardrooms, they entered political institutions. They became scientists, entrepreneurs, leaders, inventors, artists, and voices that changed the direction of history. The modern woman represents one of the greatest social transformations humanity has ever witnessed. She inherited freedoms that previous generations fought for, with courage and sacrifice. She can study what she chooses. She can build a career. She can own property. She can participate in politics. She can create businesses. She can decide the direction of her own life in ways that would have been unimaginable for many women who came before her. But every great achievement in human history creates a new challenge. Every freedom creates a new responsibility. And the modern woman faces a question that previous generations did not have to answer in the same way. When society no longer completely defines who you should become, who do you choose to become? The story of the modern woman is often told as a story of liberation, a story of breaking barriers, a story of overcoming limitations. And that story is true, but it is incomplete. Because the human journey is never only about removing obstacles, it is also about what happens after the obstacles are removed. Freedom creates possibility, but possibility creates uncertainty. Choice creates opportunity, but choice creates responsibility. The modern woman lives in a world where more paths are available than ever before, but more paths also mean more decisions, more questions, more expectations. Should she prioritize career or family? Should she pursue ambition or stability? Should she seek independence or deeper connection? Should success be measured by achievement, happiness, relationships, contribution, or something else entirely? These questions are not signs of failure. They are the natural consequences of living in a world where human beings have greater control over their own destiny. To understand the modern woman, we must travel backward through history. Because no person begins their journey alone. Every generation stands on the foundation built by those who came before. The modern woman did not appear suddenly. She is the result of thousands of years of human experience. She carries the courage of women whose names were forgotten, the sacrifices of mothers who raised generations, the determination of pioneers who challenged impossible barriers, the intelligence of women who contributed to science, philosophy, art, and civilization even when recognition was denied. Before, there were women leading corporations. There were women preserving communities. Before there were women entering universities. There were women passing knowledge through families. Before there were women demanding political representation. There were women influencing societies in ways history often failed to record. The story of women is not only a story of restrictions. It is also a story of resilience. Throughout history, societies have struggled with one fundamental question. What roles should men and women play? Different civilizations answered this question differently. Some created systems where men dominated public authority, while women managed family life. Others gave women greater economic or social influence. Some women became rulers, some became warriors, some became scholars, some became entrepreneurs. The human experience was never simple. There was never one universal story of womanhood. There were millions of individual stories shaped by culture, time, geography, family opportunity, and personal courage. One of the most important lessons from history is this. Human beings are influenced by their environment, but they are not completely defined by it. Throughout history, individuals have emerged who challenged the expectations placed upon them. They looked at the limits of their world and asked, why must this remain the way it is? That question has always been the beginning of transformation. The modern woman represents not only a change in women's lives, she represents a deeper change in humanity's understanding of potential. For centuries, societies often judged people based on categories they were born into: family background, social class, gender. nationality. But modern civilization increasingly moved toward a different idea, that human beings should have the opportunity to develop their abilities. This idea transformed education. It transformed workplaces. It transformed politics. It transformed the way people think about themselves. But the modern world also created new pressures. The woman who gained freedom also entered a world of constant comparison, a world where success is publicly displayed, where achievements are measured, where images are carefully created, where people are expected to succeed in multiple areas of life simultaneously. The modern woman may be told, be independent, be successful, be beautiful, be emotionally strong, be a good partner, be a good parent, maintain balance, never struggle, never fail. These expectations can create a hidden burden, because the same society that celebrates limitless possibilities can sometimes create impossible standards. This is why the story of the modern woman is not only about external achievements. It is also about the internal journey, the search for identity, the search for meaning, the search for balance. Because a person can gain the world and still wonder, who am I? A person can achieve success and still ask, why does this matter? A person can become independent and still desire connection. The psychologist Carl Jung explored the importance of becoming one's authentic self. He argued that human beings must move beyond simply performing roles expected by society. They must discover who they truly are. This idea is especially relevant to the modern woman, because after generations of fighting against being defined by others, she faces a new challenge, defining herself. The philosopher and psychologist Viktor Frankl taught that human beings do not survive on freedom alone. They need meaning. They need something worth committing to, something beyond themselves, something that gives life direction. The ultimate question of the modern woman is therefore not, can she succeed? History has already answered that. She can. The deeper question is, what will she do with the freedom she has gained? Will she use it only to chase approval, or will she use it to build a meaningful life? Will she measure herself only by achievements, or will she measure herself by contribution? Will she see independence as separation from others, or as the foundation from which deeper relationships can grow? The modern woman stands at a unique point in history. She carries the memory of the past. She lives in the possibilities of the present, and she will help shape the future. Her story is not only about becoming equal, it is about becoming complete. Because the greatest achievement of any human being is not simply having more choices. It is learning how to choose wisely. This is the story of the modern woman. A story of struggle, a story of courage, a story of transformation, a story of freedom. But above all, a story about the timeless human search for identity, purpose, and meaning. The question is no longer what society allows a woman to become. The question is, what will she choose to become? Chapter 1: The Woman Before Freedom, the world that created modern womanhood. Before the modern woman entered universities, before she became a leader in politics and business, before she built companies, discovered scientific breakthroughs, and shaped nations, there was another woman. A woman whose story is often overlooked. A woman who lived in a world where identity was largely inherited rather than chosen. Her life was shaped by the family she was born into, the society that surrounded her, the traditions passed down through generations, the economic realities of her time. She lived in a world very different from ours, but understanding her is essential. Because the modern woman did not emerge from nothing. She is the continuation of a much longer human story. A story of adaptation, a story of endurance, a story of contribution. The Datation of civilization. When people imagine the great achievements of history, they often picture ancient cities, massive monuments, great armies, powerful kings, famous philosophers. But beneath every civilization was something more fundamental, something less visible. The family. Before governments existed, families existed. Before schools existed, families taught. Before written history recorded human achievements, generations passed knowledge through relationships. The first lessons a human being receives are rarely taught by institutions. They are taught through human connection. A child learns language from someone. A child learns values from someone. A child learns trust, cooperation, and belonging from someone. The earliest foundations of civilization were built inside homes and communities, and women were central to this process. Throughout history, women have often performed work that was essential but difficult to measure. They raised children, They preserved traditions. They produced food. They created clothing. They managed households. They supported communities. They cared for the elderly. They maintained social connections. Much of this work was not recorded in official histories, but the absence of records does not mean the absence of importance. A society does not only depend on the people who build monuments, it also depends on the people who build human beings. The woman of the ancient world, the ancient world, was not one single reality. Different civilizations created different experiences for women. A woman's position depended on where she lived, her social class, her family background, her culture, her historical moment. There was no universal ancient woman. There were many different experiences. Some women lived under strict limitations. Others gained wealth, influence, and even political power. The story is more complex than simple oppression or simple freedom. It is a story of human societies constantly negotiating between tradition and change. Ancient Egypt, when a woman became pharaoh. Among the ancient civilizations, Egypt provides one of the most remarkable examples of female authority. Egypt was one of humanity's greatest civilizations. It built extraordinary monuments. It developed advanced systems of administration. It created one of the most powerful political structures of the ancient world. At the center of this system was the pharaoh. The pharaoh was not simply a ruler. The pharaoh represented order. The pharaoh was considered responsible for maintaining harmony between humanity, society, and the universe. Traditionally, this position belonged to men. But one woman challenged that assumption. Her name was Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut's story is fascinating because her challenge was not only gaining power, it was convincing an entire society that she had the right to hold that power. She understood a fundamental principle. Power is not only about ability. Power also requires legitimacy. A person can possess intelligence and skill, but societies often require symbols and traditions that make authority acceptable. Hatshepsut adopted the symbols of kingship. She presented herself as pharaoh. She commissioned monuments. She expanded Egypt's trade networks. Her reign became associated with prosperity and stability. Her story reveals something important. Throughout history, people who transform systems often understand those systems deeply first. They learn the rules, they master the environment, then they expand what is possible. Ancient Greece, the birthplace of democracy, and its contradiction. Ancient Greece gave humanity some of its most influential ideas: democracy, philosophy, political theory, scientific inquiry. But Greece also contained a contradiction. The society that introduced democracy did not extend political participation to everyone. In Athens, women generally could not vote, hold political office, participate directly in government. Their lives were largely connected to household responsibilities. Yet even within these limitations, women influenced society. One example was Aspasia of Miletus. Aspasia was known for her intelligence and her connection with philosophers and political thinkers. Her story reminds us, formal power is not the only form of influence. A person can shape ideas without holding official authority. Ancient Rome influence beyond official power. The Roman world created different possibilities. Roman women still lived within a patriarchal society, but some gained greater economic and social influence. Certain women could own property, manage businesses, influence family decisions, participate indirectly in political life. One of the most influential women of Rome was Livia Drusilla, the wife of Emperor Augustus. Livia never officially ruled Rome, but historians recognize her influence within imperial politics. Her story demonstrates a powerful lesson. Power does not always appear in official positions. Sometimes influence operates through relationships, knowledge, networks, persuasion. Women in African societies, the power of community and contribution. The experience of women across Africa was incredibly diverse. Different societies developed different traditions. But in many communities, women played central roles in agriculture, trade, family organization, cultural preservation. Women contributed directly to economic survival. They were not simply observers of society. They were active participants in creating and sustaining it. In many African trading societies, women became powerful economic actors. Markets were not only places of exchange, they were centers of social influence. Women traders built networks, controlled resources, and developed economic independence. This reveals an important truth. The history of women is not only a history of exclusion, it is also a history of adaptation and contribution. The agricultural revolution, how society changed human roles. One of the greatest turning points in human history was the agricultural revolution. Humans moved from primarily hunting and gathering to settled farming. This changed population growth, property ownership, family structures, social organization. As societies became more complex, roles became more specialized. Pregnancy and childcare naturally influenced human behavior. Physical labor influenced social organization. Over generations, these practical differences became cultural traditions. Eventually, many societies developed strong expectations about what men and women should do. The historian Yuval Noah Harari has explored how societies create systems of meaning that eventually appear natural, even when they developed through historical circumstances. The strength and limitation of tradition. Tradition has two sides. It provides stability, identity, continuity, shared values, but tradition can also create limitations. A person born into a certain society may discover that their abilities are restricted by expectations created before they existed. A talented woman may never become a scientist if education is unavailable. A gifted leader may never lead if society refuses to recognize her authority. This creates one of humanity's oldest tensions, the balance between preserving order and allowing growth. The woman history forgot. When we study history, we often remember queens, scientists, leaders, revolutionaries, but millions of women who shaped civilization remain unnamed. Women who raised children during difficult times, protected communities during conflict, preserved knowledge, supported families through hardship, built societies quietly. History is not only created by famous individuals, it is also created by ordinary people performing extraordinary responsibilities. The beginning of a new question for most of human history. The question was, what role does society assign to a woman? But eventually, humanity began asking a different question. What role should a woman choose for herself? That question would change everything. It would lead to new ideas about education, new movements for rights, new understandings of human potential. The world was approaching a transformation that would challenge centuries of assumptions. Chapter 1 Conclusions. Before women fought for freedom, they carried responsibility. Before they entered institutions, they built foundations. Before they demanded recognition, they contributed to civilization. The modern woman is not separate from the women of the past. She is connected to them. She carries their resilience, their sacrifices, their courage, their determination. Because history is not a collection of isolated moments, it is a chain. Each generation receives something from the previous one. And eventually, the women who came before created the foundation for a new question. What happens when women are finally given the opportunity to develop their full potential? The answer would begin with one of the most powerful forces in human history, education. Chapter 2 The Awakening. Education, Rights and the Birth of Equality. For thousands of years, societies were built around inherited roles. People were born into a world that already had expectations waiting for them. A person's family determined much of their future. Their social class influenced their opportunities. Their culture defined acceptable paths. And for many women, the question was rarely, what do I want to become? The question was, what does society expect me to become? But slowly, a new idea began to spread across humanity. An idea that would challenge ancient assumptions. An idea that would transform the lives of millions. The idea was simple. Human potential should not be limited by the circumstances of birth, the age of reason. When humanity began questioning old assumptions, the Enlightenment of the 17th and 18th centuries changed the way many people thought about society. Philosophers began questioning systems that had existed for centuries. They challenged absolute monarchy, social inequality, religious authority over government, the idea that some people were naturally born to rule while others were born to obey. New concepts emerged. Individual rights, freedom of thought, equality before the law, the importance of reason. The world began moving toward a new understanding. A person's value should come from their humanity, not simply their position in society. But there was a contradiction. The same societies discussing universal rights often excluded women from those rights. They spoke about equality, but many women could not receive advanced education, own property independently, vote, participate in political decisions. Humanity had created a new ideal, but it had not yet applied that ideal to everyone. Mary Wollstonecraft, the woman who challenged the foundations in 1792, a British writer, published a book that would become one of the foundations of modern discussions about women's rights. Her name was Mary Wollstonecraft. Her book, A Vindication of the Rights of Woman. Her argument was revolutionary. She did not argue that women were superior to men. She did not argue that women should receive special privileges. She argued something more fundamental. Women should have the opportunity to develop their abilities. Education as liberation. Wollstonecraft believed that society misunderstood women because society prevented women from developing themselves. If a person is denied education, how can society accurately judge their ability? Her argument was, a lack of opportunity can create the appearance of lack of ability. Education was not only about learning facts. Education created independence, critical thinking, confidence, economic opportunity, the ability to participate in society. A person who can think independently is hard to control. A person who understands the world can question it. This idea became one of the most powerful foundations of modern womanhood. Freedom begins with the ability to develop yourself. The battle for education. For centuries, many societies questioned whether women needed advanced education. The argument was often, a woman's primary responsibility is family life, therefore advanced education is unnecessary. But this argument ignored a deeper truth. Education does not only benefit individuals, it benefits generations. A mother is often a child's first teacher. She introduces language, values, curiosity, emotional understanding, social behavior. When women become educated, the effects extend beyond one person. They influence families and entire communities. Woman entering university. The journey into higher education was difficult. The first women entering universities often faced resistance. They were told certain subjects were unsuitable for women. Certain professions were too demanding. Intellectual achievement belonged primarily to men, but pioneers continued. They entered medicine, science, literature, law, philosophy, and they demonstrated something powerful. Ability does not disappear because society refuses to recognize it. The Industrial Revolution, the beginning of economic independence. While education was transforming possibilities, another force was reshaping society. The Industrial Revolution. Factories expanded, cities grew, work changed. The traditional relationship between home and economic production began to change. Before industrialization, family and work were often connected. Families worked together in farming, crafts, small businesses, but industrial society increasingly separated the workplace and the home. This created new opportunities and new challenges. Women entered paid employment in greater numbers. They worked in factories, textile industries, education, healthcare, but many faced low wages, poor working conditions, limited rights. The lesson was clear. Entering the workforce was an important step, but participation alone did not guarantee equality. Economic independence, the foundation of personal choice. One of the greatest transformations in women's history was economic independence. A person who can support themselves gains greater control over their decisions. Economic independence provides freedom of movement, ability to leave harmful situations, greater control over personal choices, increased confidence. This changed relationships between men and women. Historically, many relationships were shaped by economic necessity. Modern relationships increasingly became based on choice, compatibility, partnership. The fight for political voice. Education created knowledge. Employment created independence. But another question remained. Should women have a voice in the decisions that shape society? The argument of the women's suffrage movement was simple. If women live under laws, contribute to society, and are affected by government decisions, they should participate in creating those decisions. The suffrage movement across the world, women organized for voting rights. They used public campaigns, writing speeches, demonstrations, political organizing. They faced resistance. Many were criticized, some were arrested, some were attacked, but they continued because they understood something. Rights are rarely given without pressure. Throughout history, major social changes usually required people willing to challenge accepted ideas. Emmeline Pankhurst, the fight for recognition. Emmeline Pankhurst became one of the most recognizable figures in the British suffrage movement. Her organization fought aggressively for women's voting rights. The movement created intense debate. Some believed their methods were too extreme. Others believed dramatic action was necessary because peaceful requests had been ignored for too long. Regardless of the debate, the movement achieved something important. It forced society to confront a question it could no longer avoid. Can a society call itself democratic while excluding half its population from political participation? New Zealand, a historic turning point in 1893. New Zealand became the first self-governing country where women gained the right to vote in national elections. This moment proved something important. Ideas that appear impossible can become normal. History often follows this pattern. First, a change seems unrealistic. Then, a small group demands it. Eventually, future generations wonder why it was ever controversial. The psychology of social change. The people who create change often experience rejection first. Why? Because humans naturally protect familiar systems. The unknown feels dangerous. The old way feels safer. But progress depends on individuals who can imagine a different future. They ask, what if this system can be better? What if people have more potential than we assume? What if tradition is not the same as truth? The birth of the modern woman, the awakening changed the fundamental question of women's lives. The old question, what role has society assigned to me, became, what possibilities exist for me? This was a revolutionary psychological transformation because identity moved from assigned to discovered, from obligation only to conclusion. The first great transformation of modern womanhood was not about power, it was about possibility. Education opened doors. Rights created a voice. Economic independence created choices. The women who fought these battles were not only changing their own lives, they were expanding humanity's understanding of potential. Because every time society removes an unnecessary limitation, humanity discovers something new about itself. But ideas alone do not change history. They require people. People willing to prove what is possible. The next chapter tells the stories of women who turned possibility into reality. Women who entered fields where they were told they did not belong. Women who changed science, politics, justice, and culture. Chapter 3, Women Change History. Courage beyond expectations. History is often remembered through great events, wars, revolutions, discoveries, political transformations. But behind every great moment in history are individuals. People who stood at the edge of what was considered possible and decided to move beyond it. The story of the modern woman is not only the story of laws changing. It is the story of human beings proving that ability, courage, and determination cannot be permanently restricted by tradition. These women lived in different centuries. They came from different cultures. They faced different challenges. But they shared something powerful. They refused to allow the expectations of their time to become the limits of their future. Marie Curie, the woman who changed science. In a small laboratory in Paris, surrounded by difficult conditions and uncertainty, a woman worked with materials that most people barely understood. She was not searching for fame. She was searching for knowledge. Her name was Marie Curie. Today, she is remembered as one of the greatest scientists in human history. But her journey began in a world where women were often excluded from scientific institutions. A childhood shaped by learning. Marie Curie was born in Poland in 1867. From a young age, she showed extraordinary intellectual ability. But the society around her created barriers. Women in Poland had limited access to higher education. To continue her studies, she eventually moved to Paris. There, she entered the Sorbonne, one of Europe's most respected universities. Her life was not easy. She experienced financial hardship, extreme dedication, physical exhaustion, social isolation. She studied while living with very little comfort. But she continued because she believed knowledge was worth pursuing. The discovery that changed the world. Working with her husband, Pierre Curie, Marie researched radioactivity. Their work contributed to the discovery of polonium-radium. Her research transformed science. It influenced physics, chemistry, medicine. She became the first woman to win a Nobel Prize. She later became the first person to win Nobel Prizes in 2 different scientific fields. But her greatest achievement was not only discovery, it was proving something deeper. A person's potential should not be judged before they have the opportunity to demonstrate it. The lesson of Marie Curie. Marie Curie's life teaches an important principle. Talent creates possibility. But discipline creates achievement. Many people have potential. Few people are willing to endure the years of effort required to transform potential into mastery. This connects with psychologist Angela Duckworth. Duckworth's research explores the importance of perseverance. Her concept of grit describes the ability to continue pursuing long-term goals despite difficulty. Curie's life represents grit before the term existed. She reminds us, greatness is usually built in silence before it is recognized publicly. Joan of Arc, the courage to believe before others. Do some people change history through discoveries? Others change history through courage. Joan of Arc represents the power of conviction. In the 15th century, France was experiencing a national crisis during the Hundred Years' War. The country was divided. Its future was uncertain. Into this situation came a young woman from a farming family. She had no military education, no political position, no royal background. Her name was Joan of Arc, yet she believed she had a mission. She convinced leaders to trust her. She inspired soldiers. She became a symbol of French resistance. Why Joan's story matters. Joan's power did not come from traditional authority. She was not powerful because society gave her power. She became powerful because she possessed something society could not easily ignore: conviction. This reveals a profound truth about leadership. Sometimes people follow not because someone has authority. They follow because someone has belief. Viktor Frankl and the Power of Viktor Frankl argued that human beings can endure extraordinary hardship when they have meaning. Joan's life demonstrates this principle. She believed her actions served something greater than herself. Purpose gave her courage. Rosa Parks, The Power of Ordinary Courage. Not every historical transformation begins with a powerful person. Sometimes history changes because an ordinary person decides they will no longer accept something they believe is wrong. In 1955, in Montgomery, Alabama, a woman named Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a segregated bus. Her action became a turning point in the American Civil Rights Movement. The true nature of courage. People often misunderstand courage. They imagine courage as fearlessness, strength, confidence. But courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is action despite fear. Rosa Parks was not unaware of the consequences. She understood the risks, but she also understood that some principles matter more than personal comfort. This reflects the philosophy of Marcus Aurelius. The Stoics believed that a person's responsibility is to act according to virtue regardless of circumstances. Harriet Tubman, freedom used for others. Few stories demonstrate sacrifice like the life of Harriet Tubman. Born into slavery in the United States, Tubman escaped. But she did something extraordinary. She risked her own freedom repeatedly to help others escape slavery. The psychology of service. Many people desire freedom for themselves, but the highest form of leadership often begins when someone uses their freedom to serve others. Tubman's life represents courage, responsibility, compassion. Her question was not, what can I gain? It was, what responsibility comes with my ability to help? Oprah Winfrey, turning experience into influence. The modern world created new forms of power. Not only political power, not only economic power, but cultural influence. Oprah Winfrey built one of the most influential media careers in history. Her journey began with difficult circumstances, but she transformed personal experiences into communication ability, emotional intelligence, connection with millions of people. The power of story. Oprah understood something fundamental. Human beings connect through stories. People do not only want information, they want understanding. They want to feel seen. Her success demonstrates influence comes from understanding human nature. Serena Williams' excellence through relentless discipline. Sport provides one of the clearest examples of human potential. Few athletes demonstrate this better than Serena Williams. Her success required physical preparation, mental resilience, discipline, confidence under pressure. The world sees the victories, but it rarely sees the early mornings, the training sessions, the failures, the sacrifices. This reveals a universal truth. Success is usually the result of thousands of invisible actions repeated consistently. The pattern behind greatness. Different women, different centuries, different challenges, but similar principles appear again and again. 1. They challenged assumptions. They questioned what others accepted as permanent. 2. They developed themselves. Courage alone was not enough. They built knowledge, skills, discipline. 3. They accept sacrifice. Every meaningful achievement requires giving something up. Comfort, security, approval, time. 4. They served something greater. Their lives became larger than personal success. They contributed to science, justice, human progress, culture. The deeper message. The stories of these women reveal something about all human beings. The greatest limitation is often not lack of ability. It is the assumption that ability does not exist. When opportunity meets preparation, extraordinary things become possible. Chapter 3 Conclusion. The women who changed history did not wait for perfect conditions. They acted in imperfect worlds. They faced resistance. They faced uncertainty. They faced criticism. But they moved forward, because progress has always depended on people willing to imagine a future that does not yet exist. The achievements of these women changed what society believed women could become. But after the external battles came another challenge, a deeper challenge. The question was no longer, can women enter the world? The question became, who will women become once they have the freedom to define themselves? The next chapter explores the psychological revolution of modern womanhood, identity, purpose, freedom, and the search for the authentic self. Chapter 4 The New Identity. Who is the modern woman? For thousands of years, identity was largely inherited. A person was born into a world that already had answers prepared for them. Their family told them where they belonged. Their culture told them what was expected. Their society defined acceptable paths. The question was not always, who do I want to become? Often it was, what role has been prepared for me? But the modern world changed this. The modern woman entered a new reality, a reality where many traditional limitations were challenged. A reality where education, employment, technology, and social change created new possibilities. She was no longer defined only by what society expected. She could choose. But with choice came a new responsibility. Because when the world stops giving you a complete identity, you must create one yourself. The end of the assigned life. For much of human history, women's identities were closely connected to social roles. Daughter, wife, mother, caregiver, member of a community. These roles provided important things: belonging, purpose, structure, social recognition. They connected individuals to something larger than themselves. But they also created limitations. A woman with exceptional intelligence, creativity, or leadership ability might never discover those qualities if society prevented her from developing them. The modern transformation challenged this. It introduced a revolutionary idea. A person's identity should not be determined only by their circumstances of birth. A woman could become a scientist, a business leader, an engineer, an artist, a politician, a researcher, a creator. The possibilities expanded, but freedom created a new question. Freedom sounds like the ultimate solution, and in many ways it is. But freedom has a hidden complexity. When choices are limited, life can feel clearer. When choices expand, uncertainty grows. A person with one path may have fewer doubts. A person with many possible paths must constantly decide, which path matters most? What should I sacrifice? What kind of life do I value? The modern woman gained something extraordinary: possibility. But possibility requires decision, and decision requires self-knowledge. Eric Fromm, The Fear of Freedom. Eric Fromm, in his influential work Escape from Freedom, Fromm explored one of humanity's great psychological contradictions. Human beings desire freedom, but freedom can also create anxiety. Why? Because freedom removes certainty. When traditions and institutions no longer completely define us, we must answer questions ourselves. We must decide, what do I believe? What do I value? What kind of person do I want to become? For the modern woman, this creates a profound psychological shift. The old question, what does society expect from me, becomes, what do I expect from myself? Carl Jung. The search for the Ahnefelfen. Carl Jung believed that one of the greatest tasks of human life is becoming a complete person. He called this process individuation. Individuation means discovering the authentic self beneath social expectations, external approval, fear of judgment, false identities. Jung argued that people often create a public image of themselves. He called this the persona, the modern persona. The modern woman may create many versions of herself: the successful professional, the confident leader, the perfect mother, the attractive woman, the person who always appears in control. These identities are not necessarily false. They may represent real parts of a person. The problem begins when the image becomes more important than the person behind it. A woman may become so focused on appearing successful that she forgets to ask, am I actually fulfilled? Am I living according to my values? Is this the life I truly want? The pressure to be everything. One of the unique challenges of modern life is the expansion of expectations. The modern woman may receive messages like, be independent, be ambitious, be beautiful, be emotionally strong, be financially successful, be a supportive partner, be a great parent, maintain your appearance, maintain your health, never struggle, never fail. The problem is not ambition. The problem is impossible perfection. Human beings have limits. Time is limited. Energy is limited. Attention is limited. Every choice requires sacrifice. The success trap modern society often creates a powerful belief: if I achieve enough, I will finally feel complete. So people pursue more education, more money, more recognition, more status. Achievement can bring satisfaction, but achievement alone cannot answer every human question. A person can reach the top of a mountain and still ask, why did I climb it? Daniel Kahneman, The Moving Goalpost of Happiness. Daniel Kahneman's research into human judgment revealed something important. People often adapt to achievements faster than they expect. A person thinks, when I reach this position, I will finally be happy. They reach it. The mind adjusts. The achievement becomes normal. Then another goal appears. The cycle continues. Desire. Achievement. Temporary satisfaction. New desire. The lesson is not that ambition is wrong. Ambition can be one of humanity's greatest forces. The lesson is, achievement should be a tool for meaning, not a replacement for meaning. Independence and connection. Modern culture celebrates independence, and rightly so. A person should have the ability to think independently, support themselves, make decisions, build their own path, but independence can be misunderstood. There is a difference between I can stand on my own and I need nobody. The first is strength. The second can become isolation. Human beings develop through relationships. Every successful person has received something: teaching, encouragement, support, opportunity. No one truly builds a meaningful life completely alone. The question of femininity. One of the biggest questions of the modern era is, what does femininity mean? For centuries, societies often defined femininity through specific expectations. Today, those definitions are being reconsidered. A mature understanding of femininity does not need to reject the past completely, nor does it need to be trapped by the past. It can include strength, compassion, intelligence, creativity, leadership, care, independence, connection. Human beings are not made complete by choosing only one part of themselves. They become complete by integrating different parts. Strength and vulnerability. Modern society sometimes sends a confusing message. Be strong, but never struggle. Be independent, but never need help. Be successful, but never show weakness. But psychological maturity requires something deeper. True strength includes self-awareness, humility, emotional honesty, the ability to ask for help. Brené Brown has studied vulnerability and courage. Her work suggests that vulnerability is not the opposite of strength. It is often the foundation of authentic connection. The new human question. The previous generations fought for a different question. Are women capable? History has answered yes. The modern question is deeper. With all these possibilities available, how does a person create a meaningful life? Because freedom alone is not enough. A person can have freedom and still feel lost. A person can have success and still feel empty. A person can have independence and still desire belonging. Chapter 4. Conclusion. The greatest transformation of modern womanhood was not simply entering workplaces or gaining rights. Those were external changes. The deepest transformation happened internally. A woman moved from, I must become what society expects, to I must discover who I truly am. But discovering oneself is not easy. It requires reflection, courage, responsibility, self-awareness. The modern woman has entered a world of possibilities. Now she faces the challenge shared by every human being, not simply becoming successful, but becoming whole. The next chapter explores what happens when identity moves from the private world into the public world, the world of ambition, career, leadership, power, and success. Chapter 5. The woman in the workplace. Ambition, power, and success. For most of human history, the centers of power were spaces where women had limited access. The places where societies made major decisions were often dominated by men. Government, science, business, education, politics, industry. The question was rarely whether women possessed intelligence or ability. The question was whether society would allow them to demonstrate it. The modern workplace represents one of the greatest transformations in human history. A woman today can become a scientist discovering new knowledge, a business leader managing global organizations, a politician shaping national decisions, an entrepreneur creating new industries, a professional building expertise in fields once closed to her. But entering the workplace was not simply about earning income. It represented something deeper: recognition. Recognition that women's abilities were not limited to traditional roles. Recognition that talent exists wherever human beings exist. Recognition that society loses potential whenever it prevents people from developing themselves. The first battle was access. Before discussing leadership, success, or power, there was a more fundamental challenge: entry. A person cannot compete in a field they are not allowed to enter. For centuries, many professions were effectively closed to women. Women were restricted from universities, scientific institutions, professional organizations, political positions, certain careers. The first women entering these spaces were not simply building careers. They were challenging assumptions. Every woman who entered a previously closed profession was sending a message. This ability was always there. The opportunity was missing. Education, the station of professional power. The workplace revolution began with education. Education created access to knowledge, skills, confidence, professional networks, economic independence. Once women gained education, the argument changed. The question was no longer, are women capable of intellectual achievement? The evidence began answering for itself. The question became, why were these opportunities restricted for so long? Marie Curie. Mastery creates authority. The story of Marie Curie represents one of the strongest examples of competence overcoming prejudice. She entered a scientific world where women were often underestimated. But she did not gain recognition simply by demanding acceptance. She gained recognition through excellence. Her discoveries became impossible to ignore. This reveals a powerful principle. In competitive environments, ability must often be combined with mastery. Talent may open a door, but consistent excellence keeps it open. The psychology of ambition. Ambition is one of the most misunderstood human qualities. Some people view ambition negatively. They associate it with status-seeking, competition, personal advancement. But ambition can also represent something positive. It can be the desire to create something valuable, solve difficult problems, develop personal abilities, serve others, contribute to society. Without ambition, many human achievements would never exist. The question is not whether ambition is good or bad. The question is, what is ambition serving? Carol Dweck, The Power of Growth. Carol Dweck studied how people think about ability. She identified two important mindsets. The fixed mindset: a person believes ability is mostly permanent. They think, I am either naturally good at this or I am not. The growth mindset: a person believes ability can develop through learning, practice, feedback, persistence. The modern workplace rewards the second mindset because the world changes quickly. The most valuable people are not only those who know things, they are those who can continue learning. Woman in leadership. Leadership is often misunderstood as simply having authority. But true leadership requires much more. It requires vision, decision-making, communication, emotional intelligence, responsibility, the ability to influence others. As women entered leadership positions, they challenged traditional ideas about what leadership looks like. For centuries, leadership was often associated with dominance, aggression, command. But effective leadership can also involve listening, negotiation, collaboration, long-term thinking. Angela Merkel. Power through stability. Angela Merkel became one of the world's most influential political leaders. Her leadership style was not based on dramatic displays of power. It was often associated with analysis, patience, careful decision-making, negotiation. Her example challenged a common assumption that powerful leaders must always appear aggressive. Sometimes influence comes from calmness. Sometimes strength appears as stability. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Leadership. After crisis, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf became Africa's first elected female head of state. She led Liberia during a period of rebuilding after conflict. Her leadership required restoring institutions, building trust, managing difficult political realities. Her story demonstrates that leadership is not tested during easy times. It is tested during uncertainty. Oprah Winfrey influence beyond traditional power. Not all power comes from political positions. Some power comes from influence. Oprah Winfrey built one of the most influential media platforms in history. Her success came through communication, storytelling, emotional intelligence, understanding human experiences. She recognized something fundamental. People do not only want information, they want connection. They want to feel understood. Robert Greene, understanding the reality of power. Robert Greene studies power, strategy, and human behavior. One of his central ideas is that power exists wherever humans interact. Success requires more than competence. It also requires understanding, reputation, relationships, timing, human psychology, social dynamics. For anyone entering competitive environments, the lesson is important. Being talented is necessary, but talent must also be communicated, developed, and strategically positioned. The glass ceiling question. One of the most debated issues in modern workplaces is why women remain underrepresented in some leadership positions. The answer is complex. There are several factors. Historical factors. For centuries, many institutions were designed when women had limited participation. This created unequal starting points. Cultural expectations. Women and men may experience different expectations around leadership behavior, family responsibilities, professional choices, personal choices. Individuals also make different decisions based on values, interests, circumstances, priorities. A complete understanding requires looking at all these factors. The ambition double standard. Modern society also struggles with how ambition is perceived. A confident man may be described as strong, decisive, a natural leader. A confident woman may sometimes face different interpretations. This creates an important challenge. How can society evaluate people based on ability and character rather than outdated assumptions? The cost of success. Every achievement has a price. Behind every successful person are sacrifices rarely seen publicly. Time, energy, missed opportunities, difficult choices. The modern woman often faces the challenge of balancing multiple identities: professional, partner, mother, friend, individual. The challenge is not simply achieving. The challenge is deciding what deserves priority. Morgan Housel. Success is never only personal. Morgan Housel often explores how success is influenced by factors beyond individual effort. Success is shaped by behavior, opportunity, timing, environment, support systems. This challenges the idea that successful people create everything alone. Behind every achievement are often invisible foundations: teachers, families, mentors, communities, previous generations. Power without losing yourself. One of the deepest questions facing successful women is, how do you gain power without losing authenticity? The answer may not be copying old models of leadership. It may be creating better ones, a future where power includes competence, wisdom, empathy, responsibility. Chapter 5. Conclusions. The journey of women into the workplace was never only about employment. It was about human potential. It proved that talent does not belong to one gender. It showed that leadership has many forms. It demonstrated that societies become stronger when more people can contribute. But success creates another challenge. When people enter a world of competition and visibility, they face new pressures. The pressure to perform, the pressure to compare, the pressure to be accepted, the pressure to appear perfect. The next chapter explores one of the most powerful forces shaping modern identity: the battle over beauty, the pressure of being seen, and the psychological cost of living in a world where appearance has become a public performance. Chapter 6. The beauty battle. The invisible pressure of being seen. Human beings have always cared about appearance. Across every civilization, people have used appearance to communicate identity, status, culture, belonging, attraction. Beauty has always been part of the human experience. But the modern world transformed beauty into something far more powerful. It became something measured, compared, displayed, marketed, and constantly evaluated. The modern woman lives in an extraordinary contradiction. She has more freedom than many generations before her. She can build a career, own property, lead organizations, create business, influence society. But at the same time, she exists in an environment where she is constantly visible. Her appearance can be judged by millions of strangers, algorithms, advertising industry, social expectations, online communities. This creates one of the hidden struggles of modern womanhood. How do you maintain your sense of worth in a world that constantly evaluates your image? The human need to be seen. Before understanding beauty, we must understand something deeper about human nature. People want to be recognized. They want to feel
Accepted.
valued, respected, desired. This desire is not unique to women. It is part of being human. Throughout history, appearance has carried information. A person's clothing, hairstyle, and presentation could communicate social identity, cultural belonging, economic position, personal expression. Appearance was never only about looking attractive. It was also about communicating who someone was. But modern society changed the scale. A person is no longer judged only by their local community. They can now be seen by thousands or millions of people. The audience became global. Beauty through history. One of the most interesting things about beauty is that standards constantly change. What one generation considers attractive may be different from another. This reveals an important truth. Beauty is influenced by both biology and culture. Ancient and traditional societies. In many societies, beauty was connected to health, fertility, social position, resources. Renaissance Europe. During certain periods, fuller bodies were associated with prosperity. Why? Because access to abundant food was a sign of wealth. The modern era, modern societies increasingly emphasize youthfulness, fitness, fashion, individual style. Beauty became connected to personal identity. The lesson: beauty standards often reveal what a society values. The beauty industry selling more than products. The modern beauty industry is one of the largest industries in the world. It includes cosmetics, skincare, fashion, fitness, beauty, technology, cosmetic procedures, but the industry does not only sell products, it sells possibilities. The possibility of confidence, transformation, acceptance, a better version of yourself. There is nothing wrong with wanting to improve yourself. Humans naturally seek growth. The question is, when does improvement become rejection of yourself? Naomi Wolf, the beauty myth. Naomi Wolf explored how beauty standards influence women's experiences in modern society. Her argument was that as women gained progress in areas such as education, employment, political participation, a different form of pressure remained, the pressure to meet constantly changing beauty standards. The deeper issue is not beauty itself. Beauty can be creative, expressive, enjoyable, a form of self-expression. The danger appears when appearance becomes the primary measurement of human value. From external control to internal pressure historically, many restrictions placed on women were external. You cannot study. You cannot enter this profession. You cannot participate politically. Modern women have overcome many of these barriers, but another challenge emerged. The pressure moved inward. Instead of "you cannot enter this space," the message becomes "you can enter this space, but you must also look perfect while doing it." The modern woman may feel pressure to succeed professionally while also maintaining an ideal image. Social media, the age of content comparison. No technology has transformed beauty more dramatically than social media. Before social media, people compared themselves mainly with family, friends, local communities. Today, a person can compare themselves with thousands of people every day. The human brain was not designed for this level of comparison. The psychology of comparison. Human beings naturally compare themselves with others. Psychologists have studied this tendency for decades. People evaluate their success, their appearance, their achievements, their social position. But social media creates a unique problem. People compare their complete reality with someone else's carefully selected moments. A person sees perfect photos, luxury lifestyles, successful careers, beautiful relationships. But they do not see private struggles, failures, anxiety, doubt, ordinary moments. This creates a distorted picture of reality. Irving Goffman, life as performance. Irving Goffman introduced the idea that social interaction often resembles a performance. People present different versions of themselves depending on the situation. He described two spaces: front stage, the image presented to others; the public version, backstage, the private reality. The person behind the performance. Social media has expanded the front stage. People now constantly manage images, personal brands, public opinions, lifestyle presentations. The danger: a person can become so focused on managing the image that they lose connection with the person behind the image. The influencer era. The modern influencer represents a new form of visibility. Unlike traditional celebrities, influencers often appear accessible. They communicate. This is my normal life. But much online content involves editing, professional photography, strategic presentation, advertising. The result is a powerful illusion. Ordinary people compare their everyday reality with someone else's carefully designed presentation. The aging question. Perhaps one of the deepest struggles connected to beauty is aging. Every human being faces aging. It represents time, change, mortality. But societies often judge aging differently. Men are sometimes associated with experience, authority, wisdom. Women often experience stronger pressure around youth, appearance, maintaining attractiveness. This creates a psychological challenge. How do you accept natural change in a culture that constantly celebrates youth? Carl Jung, citing the complete Femme Carl Jung, believed psychological maturity requires accepting all parts of ourselves. He warned against rejecting parts of ourselves that society considers undesirable. Modern beauty culture can encourage rejection of aging, imperfection, vulnerability, natural limitations. But becoming whole requires acceptance. The goal is not becoming flawless. The goal is becoming integrated. Beauty and identity. There is nothing wrong with wanting to look attractive. The problem comes when appearance becomes the foundation of identity. Because appearance changes, trends change, opinions change, public attention changes. A person who builds identity only on external approval creates an unstable foundation. True confidence comes from knowing, I have value beyond how I appear. A person's worth also comes from character, intelligence, creativity, courage, kindness, contribution. The modern beauty paradox. The modern woman receives conflicting messages. Be confident, but remain attractive. Be successful, but do not become intimidating. Be independent, but remain desirable. Accept yourself, but constantly improve yourself. These contradictions create psychological pressure. The path to true confidence. The solution is not rejecting beauty. The solution is putting beauty in its proper place. Beauty can be part of identity, but it cannot be the entire identity. The strongest confidence is not, everyone thinks I am beautiful. The strongest confidence is, I know my value even when nobody is watching. Chapter 6, Conclusions for Generations. Women fought against being reduced only to their appearance. The modern challenge is ensuring that appearance does not become a new form of limitation. The greatest freedom is not being admired by everyone. The greatest freedom is being comfortable with yourself. Because at the end of life, people are not remembered only for how they looked. They are remembered for what they created, who they helped, what they contributed, the lives they changed. Beauty may attract attention, but character creates legacy. The modern woman has gained access to the world. Now another question remains. How does she build meaningful relationships in a world where everyone wants freedom? Chapter 7, Love in the Age of Independence. Relationships after freedom. For thousands of years, relationships were built around necessity. People depended on each other for survival. Families were economic units. Marriage created stability. Communities provided protection. A relationship was not only about personal happiness. It was about building a life structure that allowed people to survive and continue. But the modern world transformed this completely. Today, many people enter relationships not because they cannot survive alone. They enter relationships because they choose to share life with another person. This is one of the greatest changes in human relationships. But it also created a new challenge. Because when a relationship is no longer built mainly on necessity, it must be built on something deeper. The evolution of love. Throughout much of history, marriage served practical purposes. It organized family structures, inheritance, social responsibilities, economic cooperation. Love existed, affection existed, but marriage was often connected to survival and social stability. Over time, especially in modern societies, a new idea became stronger. Marriage should be based on personal choice and emotional connection. People began searching for partners who could provide friendship, emotional support, romantic connection, personal growth, shared meaning. The relationship changed from we need each other to survive to we choose each other because life is better together. This was a profound transformation, but it also raised expectations. The one-person explanation. Historically, human needs were distributed across communities. A person received different forms of support from extended family, friends, religious communities, neighbors, social groups. Modern relationships changed this. Many people now expect one romantic partner to provide almost everything: their best friend, their emotional support, their romantic partner, their financial partner, their source of encouragement, their companion through every challenge. This creates enormous pressure. One person is expected to fulfill many human needs. Esther Perel, The Paradox of Modern Love. Esther Perel has studied modern relationships and identified a powerful contradiction. Human beings want two things: security we desire, stability, trust, familiarity, belonging. We want someone who feels like home. Freedom we also desire. Independence, growth, adventure, personal identity. We want space to become ourselves. The challenge: security creates comfort, freedom creates possibility. But too much of one can threaten the other. A relationship must balance. I belong with you, and I remain myself. The independent woman and love. One of the greatest changes in modern womanhood is independence. A woman today can increasingly support herself financially, build a career, make decisions independently, create her own identity. This changes the foundation of relationships. A woman no longer needs a relationship only for survival. She can choose a relationship for connection, partnership, love, shared purpose. This can create healthier relationships, but it also requires emotional maturity. The strongest relationship is not, "I cannot live without you." It is, "I can live without you, but my life becomes richer because we build together." The paradox of choice. The modern world provides more choices than previous generations. Technology has expanded opportunities to meet people. Dating platforms have connected millions of individuals. But more options do not always create more satisfaction. Psychologist Barry Schwartz studied how excessive choices can create psychological difficulties. Too many options can lead to anxiety, overthinking, difficulty, committing, fear of making the wrong decision. Modern dating can create a mindset of endless comparison. A person may constantly wonder, what if someone better is available? The problem: when people are always searching for the perfect option, they may fail to appreciate the imperfect person in front of them. Social media and the image of love. Social media changed relationships in another way. It transformed private relationships into public displays. People share romantic moments, anniversaries, gifts, vacations, expressions of love. There is nothing wrong with celebrating relationships, but a danger exists. People begin comparing their private reality with someone else's public presentation. A couple may experience normal challenges, but they look online and see perfect relationships, perfect partners, perfect happiness. They begin believing something is wrong with their own relationship. John Gottman, The Science of Lasting Relationships. John Gottman studied thousands of couples to understand what creates successful relationships. One of his most important findings: successful couples are not those who never experience conflict. They are those who know how to handle conflict. Conflict is unavoidable because relationships bring together two different human beings. Different experiences, expectations, personalities, communication styles. The question is not, will we disagree? The question is, how will we respond when we disagree? The four destroyers of relationships. Gottman identified patterns that damage relationships. 1. Criticism, attacking the person's character instead of addressing the problem. You never care. A healthier approach: I felt hurt when this happened. 2. Contempt, a feeling of superiority toward the other person. This destroys respect. 3. Defensiveness, refusing to accept responsibility. Instead of listening, the person protects themselves. 4. Stonewalling, emotional withdrawal. The person stops engaging. These patterns reveal an important truth: love requires skills. Feelings alone are not enough. The changing cruel of men, the transformation of women, has also transformed expectations of men. Traditional societies often define men as providers, protectors, leaders. Modern relationships increasingly require men to also become emotionally available, active parents, supportive partners. Communicative. Healthy future does not require one gender to defeat the other. It requires both men and women developing their highest qualities. Divorce, failure, or freedom. Divorce is one of the most debated changes in modern society. Some argue that increasing divorce represents weakening family structures. Others argue that divorce represents freedom from harmful relationships. The reality is complex. A society must consider Stability, personal well-being, children's needs, individual freedom. A relationship maintained only by fear or obligation may not represent success. But relationships require commitment, patience, and responsibility. The future of love. The future of relationships may depend less on dependence and more on partnership. Two individuals who are capable alone, stronger together, responsible for each other. The healthiest relationship is not between two incomplete people searching for someone to complete them. It is between two whole people who choose to build something meaningful together. Chapter 7, Conclusions. The modern woman changed the meaning of relationships. She moved from a world where relationships were often necessary for survival to a world where relationships are increasingly chosen for connection and meaning. This is a remarkable achievement, but freedom created a new challenge. The challenge is no longer, can I survive without someone? The challenge is, can I build something meaningful with someone without losing myself? Because humans were not designed only for independence. They were designed for connection. The greatest lives are not built entirely alone. They are built through relationships, cooperation, and shared purpose. The next chapter explores one of the deepest questions facing modern womanhood: the relationship between motherhood, career, identity, and the meaning of family. Chapter 8, Motherhood and the Great Choice Between Family, Career, and Identity Among All Human Experiences. Few have shaped civilization more profoundly than motherhood. Every generation that has ever existed began through the care of someone who protected, nurtured, and guided the next generation. Before there were schools, there were families. Before there were institutions, there were caregivers. Before children understood the world, they experienced it through the people who raised them. For thousands of years, motherhood was considered one of the central purposes of a woman's life. But the modern world transformed this understanding. Motherhood became not only an expectation, it became a choice. And with that choice came one of the most complex questions of modern womanhood. How does a woman balance the desire to create, achieve, contribute, and also nurture life? The first human institution, the family, before governments, before corporations, before universities, before nations. There was the family. The family was humanity's first institution. It provided protection, education, emotional development, cultural transmission, social belonging. A child enters the world completely dependent. They do not know language, values, trust, cooperation, how to understand emotions. These things are learned through relationships. The first environment a child experiences shapes how they understand the world. The enviable quotient of mothers throughout history. Many forms of work were valued because they produced measurable economic outcomes. A person builds a company. A person creates a product. A person earns income. These contributions are visible, but some of the most important contributions in society are difficult to measure. Teaching a child kindness, building emotional security, passing cultural knowledge, creating a stable environment, developing the character of the next generation. These contributions rarely appear in economic statistics, but their impact can last for centuries. A great leader, a brilliant scientist, a compassionate human being, every one of them was influenced by relationships during their development. John Bowlby, The Tation of Attachment. John Bowlby changed the way psychologists understand early relationships. His attachment theory explored how early emotional bonds influence human development. Secure early relationships can contribute to emotional confidence, trust, healthy relationships, emotional regulation. This does not mean one person alone determines a child's future. Children are shaped by many influences: family, community, education, culture, personal experiences. But early relationships matter because they form the first foundation from which people experience the world. The old model of motherhood. For much of history, motherhood was not viewed as one choice among many. It was often considered an expected part of womanhood. A woman's identity was frequently connected to marriage, children, family responsibility, caregiving. This provided meaning and social importance, but it also created limitations. A woman might be judged primarily by her ability to fulfill one role. Her other abilities could remain undiscovered. The modern transformation, the modern era, changed this. Women gained greater access to education, employment, economic independence, professional opportunities. This created a new possibility: A woman could define herself through multiple dimensions. She could be a mother, a scientist, a business owner, an artist, a leader, an entrepreneur. Motherhood no longer had to be the only identity, but neither did it become meaningless. The carer and family dilemma, one of the most difficult conversations in modern society, concerns balancing career and family. The challenge exists because both can be deeply meaningful. A career can provide creativity, contribution, independence, achievement. Family can provide connection, love, responsibility, continuity. The difficulty is that time and energy are limited. Every major choice involves trade-offs. The myth of having everything perfectly modern culture sometimes creates an unrealistic expectation. A woman should be able to achieve everything at the highest level simultaneously. She should be the perfect professional, the perfect mother, the perfect partner, the perfect friend, the perfect image of health and beauty. But perfection is not a human condition. Humans are not designed to maximize everything. They are designed to make meaningful choices. Morgan Housel, The Costs of Choices. Morgan Housel often explores the idea of opportunity cost. Every decision means choosing one possibility while giving up another. This applies to every area of life. Choosing a demanding career may require sacrificing time elsewhere. Choosing family responsibilities may change professional opportunities. Choosing one path means another path remains unexplored. Wisdom is not avoiding sacrifice. Wisdom is choosing sacrifices that align with your values. Femininity in the modern world. The meaning of femininity has also evolved. Historically, femininity was often associated with care, nurturing, family, emotional connection. Modern society expanded the picture. Women are also recognized as leaders, innovators, strategists, creators. The mistake is believing these qualities must compete. A person can be strong and compassionate, ambitious and caring, independent and connected. Human beings are not meant to fit into one narrow definition. Tradition and change. The debate around motherhood often becomes a debate between tradition and modernity. One side argues traditional family structures protected important human needs. Another side argues traditional expectations sometimes limited individual freedom. Both perspectives contain important insights. Traditions often survive because they solve real human problems. But traditions must also be examined because some may prevent growth. The deeper question is not, should society return to the past, nor should society reject the past completely. The better question is, what should humanity preserve, and what should humanity improve? The role of fathers. The future of motherhood cannot be discussed without discussing fatherhood. Children are not only the responsibility of mothers. Families function best when responsibility is shared. Modern societies increasingly recognize the importance of involved fathers, emotional presence, shared parenting, supportive partnerships. The future of family requires both men and women adapting. The global family challenge. Many societies today are experiencing major demographic changes. Some countries face declining birth rates. Reasons include economic pressure, housing costs, delayed marriage, changing priorities, career considerations. This creates a difficult question. How can society support individual freedom while also supporting future generations? Because every society depends on one simple reality. The next generation must be raised. Motherhood is a form of creation. Human beings often celebrate creation. They celebrate buildings, companies, discoveries, inventions. But creating and raising a human being is also an act of creation. A child represents the continuation of humanity. The values, knowledge, and character passed to that child influence the future. This does not mean every woman must become a mother. Human lives have different paths. Meaning comes through different forms of contribution. But when motherhood is chosen, it remains one of the most profound human responsibilities. The deeper question of choice. The greatest transformation of modern womanhood is choice. The ability to ask, what kind of life do I want to build? But choice requires wisdom. Because freedom without reflection can become confusion. The goal is not simply having unlimited options. The goal is choosing what creates meaning. Chapter 8. Conclusions for generations. Women were often defined only through motherhood. Modern society challenged that limitation. A woman can be more than a mother. But motherhood, when chosen, remains one of humanity's most important contributions. The future should not force women to choose between family or ambition, love or achievement, care or independence. The deeper goal is creating a world where human beings can responsibly pursue meaningful lives. Because the question is not, what role should every woman have? The question is, what life does each person believe is worth building? But even after achieving freedom, success, relationships, and choices, another challenge remains. Many modern people discover something unexpected. External freedom does not always create inner peace. The next chapter explores the hidden struggles behind modern life: mental health, loneliness, anxiety, and the search for meaning. Chapter 9: The Hidden Struggle, Mental Health, Loneliness, and the Search for Meaning. The story of the modern woman is often told through visible achievements. The woman who became a doctor, the woman who built a company, the woman who became a political leader, the woman who entered fields that previous generations were denied. These achievements are real. They represent progress, they represent courage, they represent generations of struggle finally producing results. But every human story has a visible side and an invisible side. The visible side shows success, independence, achievement, recognition. The invisible side contains questions that cannot always be seen. Am I truly happy? Does my life have meaning? Do people know the real me? Am I enough? The modern world solved many external problems, but it created new internal challenges. The question is no longer only, can I succeed? The deeper question becomes, after I succeed, what gives my life meaning? The paradox of progress. Human history has a fascinating pattern. As societies become wealthier and more technologically advanced, people do not automatically become fulfilled. Why? Because human suffering is not only caused by external conditions. A person can struggle because of poverty, but a person can also struggle because of meaninglessness, loneliness, identity confusion, fear, comparison. Material progress can improve life, but it cannot answer every human question. Freedom and the burden of choice. Freedom is one of humanity's greatest achievements. But freedom also creates responsibility. When society provides a fixed path, uncertainty is reduced. When society provides many possible paths, individuals must decide. The modern woman can choose a career, a family, entrepreneurship, travel, creative work, leadership, community service. Many different possibilities. But every choice creates another question. Did I choose correctly? Am I missing something else? Should I have taken another path? More freedom creates more possibility. But more possibility also creates more uncertainty. Eric Fromm, The Anxiety of Freedom. Eric Fromm explored one of humanity's great contradictions. People desire freedom, but freedom can also create anxiety. Why? Because freedom removes the comfort of certainty. When traditions, communities, and institutions no longer completely define our lives, we must define ourselves. We must answer, what do I believe? What do I value? What kind of person do I want to become? The modern woman gained the freedom to choose her identity, but that freedom also creates the responsibility of creating one. The identity challenge. Previous generations often had clearer expectations. A woman knew what society expected. Modern women have more possibilities. This is a great achievement, but it creates complexity. A person may ask, should I focus on career? Should I prioritize relationships? Should I have children? Should I pursue personal growth? Should I seek financial success? These questions are not signs of weakness. They are signs of living in a world with greater possibilities. Carl Jung. The search for the true self. And Carl Jung believed one of life's greatest tasks is discovering the authentic self. He called this process individuation. Individuation means becoming a complete person, not simply the person others expect, not simply the image shown to the world, but the person beneath the expectations. The modern woman may carry many identities: the successful professional, the independent woman, the supportive partner, the caring mother, the confident public image. But eventually, every person must ask, who am I when nobody is watching? The success trap. Modern culture often sends a powerful message. Achievement creates happiness. The formula appears simple: work harder, achieve more, become successful. Then you will feel complete. But many successful people discover a surprising truth. Achievement solves some problems. It does not solve all problems. A person can have a respected career, financial security, social recognition, a beautiful lifestyle, and still experience loneliness, anxiety, emptiness. Because success answers, what have I achieved? But meaning answers, Why does it matter? Daniel Kahneman, the moving tractate of happiness. Daniel Kahneman studied human decision-making and happiness. One important insight from psychology is that humans adapt quickly. A person believes, when I reach this goal, I will finally be happy. They achieve it. For a while, satisfaction increases. Then the mind adjusts. The achievement becomes normal. A new goal appears. The cycle becomes desire, achievement, adaptation, new desire. The lesson: a meaningful life cannot be built only on reaching the next achievement. Social media, the age of comparison. The modern woman lives in a world where comparison has reached a completely new level. Before, people compared themselves mainly with those around them. Today, people compare themselves with thousands of people every day. Social media shows beauty, success, travel, relationships, luxury, achievement, but it rarely shows failure, doubt, fear, confusion, ordinary struggles. This creates a dangerous illusion. People compare their complete reality with someone else's carefully edited moments. Jonathan Haidt, The Digital Transformation of Human Psychology. Jonathan Haidt has explored how digital environments affect human behavior. Technology has created benefits, communication, access to information, new opportunities, but it has also created challenges. Constant comparison reduced face-to-face interaction, attention problems, increased psychological pressure. The human mind evolved in small communities. Modern technology exposes it to a global audience. This creates a psychological environment humans have never experienced before. The loneliness paradox. One of the greatest contradictions of modern life is this: people are more connected than ever, yet many feel increasingly alone. Why? Because connection is not only communication. A person can have thousands of followers, hundreds of contacts, constant message, and still lack deep friendship, emotional intimacy, a sense of belonging. Humans do not only need to be seen, they need to be known. Viktor Frankl, meaning above comfort. Viktor Frankl developed one of the most important ideas in modern psychology. Human beings need meaning. Frankl argued that people can endure difficult circumstances if they have a reason to continue. Meaning gives direction. He identified three sources of meaning. Creation, meaning through what we contribute. Examples: work, art, building, helping others. Experience, meaning through what we encounter. Examples: love, friendship, nature, beauty, connection. Attitude, meaning through how we respond to situations we cannot control. This final category is powerful because it reminds us we may not control everything that happens, but we always influence how we respond. Independence without isolation. Modern society values independence, and independence is important. A person should have the ability to stand on their own. But independence should not become isolation. There is a difference between I can stand alone and I must always be alone. The strongest people are not those who need nobody. They are those who can stand independently, love deeply, accept support, give support, build meaningful connections. The major modern woman's psychological maturity is not becoming perfect, untouchable, completely independent, always successful. Maturity means integration, the ability to hold different parts of yourself together, strength and vulnerability, ambition and humility, freedom and responsibility, achievement and meaning. Chapter 9, Conclusions. Previous generations fought for women to have choices. The modern woman inherited those choices. But choices alone do not create a meaningful life. Freedom creates opportunity, but meaning requires responsibility, connection, purpose, contribution. The greatest question is no longer, can women achieve? History has already answered. The deeper question is, after achieving freedom, how does a person create a life worth living? The final chapter looks toward the future, a future shaped by artificial intelligence, technology, changing families, new careers, new definitions of identity. The question, what will the woman of tomorrow become? Chapter 10, The Future. Woman beyond equality toward human flourishing. Every generation inherits a different world. The women of the past inherited traditions. The women of the modern era inherited battles for rights, education, and opportunity. But the woman of the future will inherit something completely different. She will inherit a world of extraordinary possibilities, a world shaped by artificial intelligence, automation, global communication, longer lifespans, changing families, rapid cultural transformation. The future woman will not only ask, can I participate? That question has already been answered. The deeper question will become, What will I create with the freedom I have received? The technological revolution, a new human environment throughout history. Technology has transformed human existence. The agricultural revolution changed how humans organized societies. The industrial revolution changed how humans worked. The digital revolution changed how humans communicated. Now, artificial intelligence represents another major transformation. AI will influence education, careers, business, creativity, decision-making, human relationships for women. This transformation may create enormous opportunities. Technology can provide flexible employment, global opportunities, access to education, new forms of entrepreneurship. A woman in one part of the world can now create value for people thousands of kilometers away. Knowledge is becoming more accessible, but every technological revolution creates uncertainty. Some jobs will change, some skills will become less valuable, new skills will become essential. The future will reward people who develop uniquely human abilities, creativity, adaptability, emotional intelligence, critical thinking, wisdom, artificial intelligence, and human value. The rise of AI creates one of the deepest questions of the future. If machines can perform many tasks, what makes human beings valuable? The answer may not simply be productivity. Human value comes from qualities machines struggle to replace. The ability to create meaning, the ability to build relationships, the ability to understand suffering, the ability to make moral decisions, the ability to imagine a better future. Technology may change what humans do, but it cannot replace the fundamental human search for purpose. Yuval Noah Harari, The Future of Human Identity. Yuval Noah Harari has explored how technology may challenge traditional ideas about work, intelligence, identity, human capability. For centuries, people define themselves through their occupations. I am a farmer, I am a teacher, I am a doctor, I am an engineer. But as technology transforms work, people may need to find identity beyond occupation. The future question may become, not what do I do, who am I? The future of carers. The traditional career path was predictable: education, employment, promotion, retirement. The future may look different. People may have multiple careers, continuous learning, entrepreneurial paths, remote work, creative careers. This creates freedom, but freedom requires discipline. A world with unlimited choices requires people who understand themselves. The future of family technology will change many things, but one human need will remain: connection. Families are changing. Modern societies are experiencing later marriages, smaller families, different parenting arrangements, new relationship patterns. These changes bring opportunities, greater choice, more equality, more personal freedom. But they also create challenges: loneliness, weaker community bonds, demographic changes. The future challenge is not simply preserving old structures. It is understanding what human needs those structures were designed to fulfill. Will Durant Civilization and Continuity. Will Durant studied the rise and fall of civilizations. One of his important observations was that civilizations survive through culture, education, family, shared values. A society requires both innovation and continuity. A civilization that refuses to change becomes stagnant. A civilization that destroys everything from the past loses wisdom. The challenge of the future is balance. To improve without forgetting. To innovate without losing humanity. The future of men. The future woman will not exist separately from the future man. Human societies are built through cooperation. As women's roles change, men's roles also changed. Traditional expectations often define men as protectors, leaders. Modern relationships increasingly require men to also become emotionally present, supportive partners, active fathers, collaborative contributors. The future should not be about one gender defeating another. The strongest societies are built when both men and women develop their highest qualities. The future of femininity. One of the deepest questions of the future is, what does femininity mean in a changing world? The answer cannot simply be a return to the past. The world has changed. But it also cannot be a rejection of every tradition, because traditions often contain accumulated human wisdom. A mature understanding of femininity may include strength, compassion, intelligence, creativity, leadership, care, independence, connection. A person does not become more complete by removing parts of themselves. They become complete by integrating them. The danger of extremes. Every major social transformation creates extremes. One extreme says, women must completely abandon traditional roles. Another says, Women must completely return to traditional roles. Both views underestimate human complexity. Different women will find meaning through different paths. For one woman, meaning may come through motherhood. For another, through scientific discovery. For another, through entrepreneurship. For another, through teaching, art, leadership, or service. A mature society does not force one definition of success. It creates the conditions where people can responsibly pursue meaningful lives. The next generation of women, the next generation will inherit extraordinary opportunities. They will have access to more education, more information, more technology, more possibilities. But they will also inherit new challenges. They will ask, who am I beyond my achievements? How do I balance freedom and responsibility? How do I build deep relationships in a digital world? How do I define success for myself? These are not only women's questions, they are human questions. Viktor Frankl, Freedom and Meaning. Viktor Frankl taught one of the most important lessons of human existence. Freedom alone is not enough. A meaningful life requires responsibility. A person can have unlimited choices and still feel lost. Because meaning does not come from having every option. Meaning comes from choosing something worth committing to. Freedom gives possibilities. Responsibility gives direction. Meaning gives purpose. The complete woman, the future woman, does not need to prove that she belongs. Generations before her fought that battle. Her challenge is different. Her challenge is becoming fully human. A complete woman can be strong without becoming hard, independent without becoming isolated, successful without becoming empty, compassionate without losing herself, ambitious without losing connection. The future is not about women becoming something they were never meant to be. It is about creating a world where every person has the opportunity to become who they are capable of becoming. Final documentary conclusion. The story of the modern woman is one of humanity's greatest transformations. It began with limitation. It continued through courage. It expanded through education. It advanced through rights. It grew through opportunity. But the journey does not end with freedom. Because freedom is not the final destination. Freedom is the beginning. The women of the past fought for the right to choose. The women of today live with those choices. The women of tomorrow must decide what those choices will create. The greatest measure of progress is not only how many barriers we remove. It is what we build after those barriers are gone. The ultimate question of the modern woman is not, can she succeed? History has already answered, she can. The ultimate question is, with all the freedom she has gained, what kind of life will she choose to create? Because the greatest achievement is not becoming equal to someone else. The greatest achievement is becoming fully yourself.